This is a Google Sheets beginner training where we will start from the ground up, creating a simple worksheet together, then learn how to format it, organize our data, add formulas and functions, download and print our file. You will have access to both the starting and final version of our worksheet, along with a few different learning examples that we covered during the course. Feel free to start from the beginning and follow each section, or skip around to the chapter that interests you most. To access Google Sheets, you will need to log in with your Google account. From there, you have to create a new worksheet. There are several ways to do that. The first way is to click on the 9 dots next to your Google account profile. It lists all the applications available in your Google account. Select the drive. You will see all the files currently on your G drive. On the left, click on New and scroll down to Google Sheets. You can either click on the Google Sheets to open a new untitled worksheet, or click on the arrow right next to Google Sheets and select Blank Spreadsheet or create a worksheet from a template. The second way to start a new worksheet is to type sheets.google.com in the web browser address bar and pressing enter. You will be taken to the Sheets area where you can click on the large plus sign to create a blank worksheet. This is the same as if you click the 9 dots next to your Google profile, and instead of selecting the drive, you scroll down farther and select Sheets. Third way, which is the fastest if you can remember the URL address, is going to your address bar in the browser and typing sheets.new. When you press enter, you will be looking at a brand new worksheet. Now that we have created all these blank worksheets, let's save one. All the others will be discarded unless we name or save them. Click on the untitled spreadsheet and give it a new name. We're going to call it Personal Budget and make it our favorite by selecting the star on the right. Facing the blank sheet can be daunting, but remember, all worksheets evolve. Start by brainstorming and entering data without aiming for perfection. We will improve it later on by organizing, formatting, and adding formulas. Right now, we want to just get started by adding the information we want to include. There are several ways you can get started without having to reinvent the wheel and to get ideas how you want to design your worksheet. First, we can go to another Google worksheet, select the data we like to have in our own file, press Command+C on Mac or Control+C on PC, then go to your New Worksheet tab at the top of the browser and paste it there with Command or Control+V. That was super easy and it got us started. If you want to copy data from an Excel file instead of Google Sheets, you can do that also. Open your Excel file, select the data to copy, then go to your new Google worksheet and paste it. You can combine and include the data from several sources in your worksheet. If you have a file from which you would like to bring the entire tab from, you can also do that. So I like this personal monthly budget file and I would like to have it in my new file as a reference or to get me started. Right-click on the tab and go to Copy to. Select either New Spreadsheet or Existing Spreadsheet. Now my drive area opens, so I will select the file I want to move a copy of this tab to and click on the blue button to insert. You will get a message confirming the move, and either you can go directly to the spreadsheet from here or click OK and go to your new file tab at the top of the browser. When I go to my file, I can now see a second tab titled Copy of Budget with the copied information. And finally, you can just start adding your own information. Since I want to create a personal budget, I'm going to put down my checking and saving balances, then income sources, and then I will start listing expenses. This is just to get me started, and I can come back later and add more expenses when I have that information. At this point, I just want to brainstorm what I want to have in my personal budget. I will also add savings and debt information, and voila, we have our very first worksheet where we will track our finances. In the next few videos, we will organize, format, and analyze our money. Speed up your process with templates in Google Sheets. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, especially if you're new to Google Sheets or Excel. Let me show you a couple of ways to get to templates. When you get to the main google.com page, click on the 3x3 dots next to your profile icon. Find Sheets under the Google Applications Once you're here, select the template gallery at the very top. Once you click the arrows, you will see all kinds of templates: budget, invoices, education, personal, business, etc. If you get to Google Sheets and you don't see the template gallery, that means you have to go back to the menu on the left, go to settings, and make sure the templates checkbox is checked. The other way to get to templates is select your drive and then go to New, scroll down to Google Sheets, and instead of selecting blank spreadsheet, select from a template. So now we got to the same place. Select any templates you like. So I'm going to select this monthly budget. It looks pretty good. Once you double click, you will open it. You can click around to see if there are more than one tab at the bottom. The templates are usually very clean, so sometimes they don't have enough rows. You can add rows if you have that option at the bottom. Select add and you can specify how many rows you want to add. You can rename the template. So from monthly budget, I'm going to call it my budget. And then I'm going to select the star to make it my favorite. Now, another reason why I love using templates is not necessarily for the calculations, but rather for formatting. So let's say I have a new worksheet here and I don't want to spend the time on formatting. I can just go to the monthly budget template and copy some formatting I like and then go to my worksheet and under Edit, Paste Special, Format Only. This is a way to use the templates that's already nicely formatted. If you want more options for templates, maybe you're looking for some specific templates, you couldn't find it in the Google Sheets gallery. If you click on Extension and Add-ons, you can select Add-on. Now you can search for templates here. Be careful though. Some of them are not free, but if you search for template gallery and then select the one that's made by vertex42.com, that one actually has free templates for you. So once you install it, it's going to be either under add-ons in your menu or under extensions. Scroll down to the template gallery for sheets and select browse templates. Here you can choose the one you like. Once I select billing invoice, it's asking me to copy to Google Drive. Once you do that, you can use it as any other template. There are several ways to organize your Google Sheet files on Google Drive. First, go to Google Drive where all your files are located. You will see individual files and folders there. Remember, it's not just Google Sheets you can store on Google Drive. You can have various types of files here. To move a file, click and drag it to a folder, just like you do on your computer. When you release the file, it will be moved to that folder and you will receive a brief message confirming the move. You have a couple of seconds to undo the move. Now you may actually see the location on your G Drive. If you're not sure where you are, look at the breadcrumbs at the top. It shows you exactly the path on your drive. You can click My Drive to return to the main location of your files and folders. Another way to organize your Google Sheet files is to click on the arrow left to My Drive. You can see all the folders and subfolders on your drive, similar to a computer filing system. You can also drag a file directly to a folder listed on the left and drop it there. You will see a brief message in the lower left corner telling you where you moved your file and have an option to undo. You are also able to move your file while it is open. The folder icon next to its name tells you the location on the Google Drive. If you click on the arrow left, you can go up a level. Once you identify the place you want to save it, click the Move Here button. You will see a message from where the file was moved and whether you want to undo that move. Sometimes you may want to move a file to a new folder. You can also do that. Click on the folder icon next to your file name and scroll down to the new folder icon. This will create a subfolder of the current folder. Give your new folder a name and check the blue check mark. Now you created a subfolder, but you still have to click the Move Here button to move the file there. Now, organization is never complete if you don't delete files you no longer need. To delete a file, right-click on the three dots next to its name and select Move to Trash. You will see a brief message that the file was moved to trash and a few-second option to undo. You can also move files to trash when they are open by going to File and choosing Move to Trash. Files in the trash remain there for 30 days before permanent deletion. At this point, you can take the file out of trash or go to Sheets home screen. To access your trash, go to your Google Drive and scroll down to the trash icon at the bottom. You can restore files from here by clicking on the three dots indicating more actions next to its name and selecting Restore. A brief message will give you an option to go to the new file location. Google Sheets are great for organizing and performing calculations. It uses standard operators for formulas such as a plus sign for addition, minus sign for subtraction, asterisk for multiplication, forward slash for division, and caret for exponents. Let's learn how to create simple formulas that will add, subtract, multiply, and divide values. I have this vacation budget here for a trip for 2 people. It has a list of expenses for how many people or days and how much did each cost. I want to calculate the total cost for each category as well as the total for the trip. When we create formulas, we use cell references. Each cell in Google Sheets has its own personal address, which references column first, then the row. So for example, cell F3 has the amount of our vacation budget. By combining a mathematical operator with cell references, you can create a variety of simple formulas. Every formula starts with an equal sign. There are 2 ways of adding cell references to formulas. First, by typing in their address. To calculate the total cost for 2 airplane flights, we type equal and then D7 for the number of tickets, then add the asterisk for multiplication and E7 for cost per each ticket. When we press enter, we see the total cost of $1,000. Now let's calculate our hotel cost. Start with equal D8 for the number of days times E8 for the cost per day. Before we press enter, notice the yellow dashed border and slight shade for the 2 cells that are part of the formula. Whenever you click on the formula, the cells used in it will be dashed. The total cost for the hotel was $600. Now the second way, which is easier, of referencing cells is by pointing and clicking the cells you want to include in your formula. So for example, to calculate how much we spent for breakfast and lunch on our trip, we would type equal, and now instead of typing in D9, we will click on that cell and now you will see it in the formula. Then we will multiply by the cost per day to complete the formula. Press enter to see the total. We will do the same for the next 2 categories. Clicking and pointing cells is much faster and less prone to errors. For the last item, we're just going to reference it by typing equal and clicking on the cell E12. It is better to reference it rather than manually re-enter the amount, because should you update the number in E12, it will automatically update in the total rather than having to change it in 2 places. Now let's calculate the total expenses for our trip and use the plus sign for addition. Type equal, then click on cell F7 plus F8 plus F9, etc. Our trip cost $2,330. If we wanted to figure out how much it costs us per day, we could use the forward slash for division and do a formula by taking the total expenses and dividing it by 5 days. You can include numbers in your formulas. So it seems that our trip cost us about $466 per day. If we wanted to find out how much did we go over our budget, we can take the vacation budget and then subtract the total trip expenses to find out that we went over $130 over budget. What is great about using formulas rather than manually adding numbers is that any type of update or change will flow through your worksheet. So if I now find out that the air flight tickets will cost $600, I can update that amount in cell E7 and all other calculation will flow through. Total expenses were updated and cost per day increased and the amount we went over budget also increased. And we didn't have to redo any calculations. Now, if something doesn't seem right to you, at any point you can double check your formula by clicking on the formula cell to see the cell references in the cell itself as well as the top formula bar. Additionally, a dotted border appears around all the cells being referenced, and I can easily spot the 2 cells that are missing from our total expenses. To edit the formula, I can double click on the cell and go inside it to correct it. Google Sheets has a large library of ready-to-use functions, which are predefined formulas that you can use in all type of calculation. So for example, our total expenses formula could have been simplified by using the Google Sheets sum function. We would input equal, then sum, and then enclose the relevant cells within parentheses. We will go over a few fundamental ones later in the course. A significant advantage of using Google Sheets or Excel for calculations is the ability to automate repetitive tasks, like copying and reusing formulas. Let's go back to our vacation expense tracker. Now we have 2 trips that we're keeping track of. One for a trip to Dallas, Texas, and another one to New York City. We want to set up formulas for our trip to Dallas and copy them over to the New York City one. There are several ways we can do that. The first way of copying formulas is simply by copying and pasting them. First, I'm going to perform cost calculation for our 2 tickets to Dallas by entering equal, then selecting cell D5 for number of tickets and E5 for cost per ticket to find out it costs us $1,200 for our air travel. In Google Sheets, you can copy the formula from cell F5 by pressing Command plus C on Mac or Control plus C on PC, or go to Edit, Copy. Then go to cell F6 for total lodging expenses and press Command V on Mac or Control V on PC. I will continue to do the same for the rest of the expenses. Before we move to the second way of copying formulas, I will perform 2 more calculations that I will use later on. To calculate the total expenses, I will use the sum function and add up all the costs together. I also need to calculate the cost per day for a trip, so I will take the total expenses and divide it by 5, which is the total days that I spent in Dallas. Now, the second way of copying a formula is by using the fill option. I'm going to go to my New York City trip and create the formula for the total cost for our tickets to the Big Apple. Then instead of using the copy and paste method, I will hover over the lower right corner of my cell until I see a blue fill handle. I will click, hold, and drag the fill handle over the cells to which I want to copy the formula. Once I'm done, I will release the mouse or trackpad. We are going to quickly check the formulas by double-clicking on the cells to see which cells are included in it. The cell references should be different for each cell, depending on its row, and they are. To calculate the total expenses and cost per day, I will use the copy and paste option because it is more logical to use here. However, when I double-check my formulas, I notice that the cost per day formula is not correct for New York City, as that trip was 4 days long, not 5 days like the Dallas trip. This is why using manual numbers in formulas can cause problems and should be avoided. To fix this, I will go back to my cost per day calculation for Dallas and create a formula that references different total trip days for each trip. Now when I paste over the formula from the Dallas trip to New York, it works perfectly because it references number of days, which is different for each trip. The next 2 ways of pasting formulas are with autofills. This feature allows you to quickly fill down a formula or a series of values in adjacent cells. First, we need to enter the formula in the cell where we want to start the sequence. Then we need to move our cursor to the small square located in the lower right corner of the cell. Now we double-click that square. Google Sheets automatically copied the formula down as far as there's data in the adjacent cells in the column to the left or right. This is a super quick way of pasting formulas, especially if you have many rows of data. The second way of using autofill is by selecting special suggested autofill option in Google Sheets. Let me show you how that works. After I enter the formula in the first total cost cell and press enter, I get a message that shows me suggested autofill formula. I can press the check mark if I agree with the suggestion or press command enter. I can also decline the suggestion by selecting the X. As you can notice, this doesn't always work 100% as the formula copied over down to our total expenses and cost per day, which requires different formulas, but we can just delete them. Now, in order for the suggested autofill option to work in your spreadsheet, you have to activate it by going to Tools, Autocomplete, and making sure you have the Enable Autocomplete option checked. Finally, the last way of copying formulas is with the Paste Special option. If I copy my formulas from the Dallas trip to my New York City, you can see that my formatting changed also. So instead of using the Command V option, we will go to Edit, Paste Special, and select Formulas Only to keep our New York City formatting. Now, one main point about all these copying and pasting options here is that we used relative cell references, which are the default cell references in Google Sheets and Excel. What it means that when you copy over formulas, the cells referenced in it change in relation to the new relative position of rows and columns. However, there are many times you may want to keep the references absolute and not change when copied. In that case, you could opt to have the row and/or column constant. These are called absolute references. We will go over the main differences later in the course. If you have a Google Sheets with large amount of data, it is common to use a smaller font size for easier navigation. However, this can make it challenging to read the information. If you try to use your trackpad to zoom in or out and get a closer look at the data, you may find that it doesn't work. You also won't find the plus-minus zoom option in the lower right corner that Excel does, and you may be expecting it in Google Sheet also. However, there are ways you can zoom in and out of Google Sheets. One way to adjust the zoom level in Google Sheet is by using the zoom option located at the top of the menu to the left of the cell formatting option. By default, the zoom level is set at 100%. However, if you click on the arrow down, you can choose from various predefined options such as 125, 150, and so on. You can also zoom out to 90%, 75%, and 50%. These are the default options, but you can also specify the amount of zoom manually by typing it into the percentage box and pressing enter. The second way of zooming in and out is through your Chrome browser. One way to do this is by pressing Command+ on your keyboard, and if you repeat the action, you will increase the zoom. If the shortcut doesn't work for you, you can also access it by either going to the Chrome menu, View, Zoom In, or clicking on the three dots next to your Chrome profile and scrolling down to zoom. After that, you will notice a magnifying glass appear on the right in the URL address bar. If you hover over it, you will see the current magnification level. If you click on it, a small pop-up will appear, which you can use to increase or decrease the zoom. At any point, you can also reset it to 100% magnification. The magnifying icon will only appear when you are either zoomed in or out in your browser. It remains hidden when you are at the default zoom level of 100%. You can also control the Chrome zoom option by clicking on the three dots next to the Chrome profile image and scrolling down to setting. Then go to appearance on the left, and under page zoom option, you can change the default zoom. By default, the cells of every new spreadsheet in Google Sheets are always the same size, which may not accommodate all data. If you receive a worksheet with ill-fitting data, you will need to adjust the rows and columns before you can use it. So I have here our New York City budget, but I can see that not only some of the content is too long, the content can be displayed. Additionally, some columns are way too wide and irregular. It is hard to read and analyze the information. First, I'm going to fix the columns. I'm going to select column C and hover the mouse over the line between column C and D until the cursor turns into a double arrow. Then I'm going to click and drag the column border to the right to increase column width manually. If I dragged it to the left, I would decrease the width. I'm going to do the same with row 7. You can also adjust the rows and columns through auto-sizing to fit the content exactly as needed. I will select row 8, which is way too tall for my text, and instead of dragging the selected border down, I will double-click it with my mouse or trackpad. You can see how perfectly it adjusted its height to fit the content. I will do the same with row 9. You can also select multiple rows and columns and do the same. I will select row 10 and 11 and double-click the bottom border to have both rows auto-sized. Rather than resizing rows and columns individually, we can modify the height and width of every row and column in a spreadsheet at the same time using the Select All button. The Select All button is in the top left corner where row 1 and column A intersect. Once you click on it, all the rows and columns are selected. If I grab a border of one of the rows and resize it, all the rows will be resized to the same height. But that doesn't work well as the height is too much. So instead, I will double click on the border to have all the rows auto-sized to fit the respective text perfectly. And then I will do the same to the columns. And voila! That was super quick and the format looks pretty good for a 10-second fix. Just to finalize adjusting our rows and columns, I will perform 2 more customizations. Instead of having each of the columns E, F, and G auto-size to different width, I want to size them evenly because they hold similar data and that will look better. I will select the 3 columns by clicking one, then pressing Shift while selecting the other 2, and then manually resize them to fit the longest column header. One last thing that often helps is narrowing down any empty columns, so I will decrease the width of column A. And you can see how with a touch of customization, the worksheet transformed into a sleek, readable, and professional format in no time. You may need to add or remove empty rows or columns in Google Sheets to keep things organized or make space for new information. There are several ways you can delete rows and columns. I've got our vacation budget here, and you will notice that in some areas we have extra rows and columns, while in others we're missing some. The first way to delete a row is by selecting it, right-clicking, and going to Delete Row. I can do that not just for one row, but select multiple by pressing Shift while selecting, and then right-click to delete. This option to delete is also available in the Google Sheets menu under Edit, and then Delete Selected Rows. To delete a column, select it, and then click on the arrow down next to column letter, and scroll down to Delete Column. What is also very useful is being able to delete rows and columns that are not consecutive. I'm going to select column C, then press Command on Mac or Control on PC and select my other column F, then right-click and select Delete Selected Columns. This is especially useful when you have many empty rows throughout the worksheet. Select non-consecutive rows while pressing Shift and then right-click to delete them. I'm going to clean up the worksheet a bit more by deleting some of the empty rows at the top. Just as with deleting rows and columns, there are also several ways to insert new ones. Let's say we want to add some space between our Dallas and New York City budget. We can select row 13, then right-click and insert one row either above or below the selected row. Now, to insert multiple rows at once, you have to select the number of rows you want to insert. So if I want to insert 3 new rows, I will select that many, then right-click, and now we have an option to either insert 3 new rows above or below. If you make a mistake, undo with Command+Z on Mac or Control+Z on PC. You can also use the Google Sheets menu to insert rows or columns. Select one or multiple rows, then go to Insert, Rows, and select either above or below. To insert multiple columns, select one, Shift-select the last one, then go to Insert, Columns, and insert left or right. The number of columns listed will be dependent on the number you selected. One less known trick is that you can also insert cells in your spreadsheets. This is especially useful when you just want to shift data in one part of your spreadsheet. You don't want to move all the data left, right, or up and down, but rather just move section of your sheet. To move one cell, select it, then go to Insert, and then specify how you want to shift the cells, either shift right or shift down. You can select multiple cells and do the same. This is probably more likely the way you would use this option. If you select most of your data in a row and opt to use the Insert Cells option, it would be almost as if you inserted a new row. One of the coolest options in Google Sheets that is better than in Excel is being able to quickly select and drag rows and columns manually in your worksheet. I find this option one of my favorite and I use it a lot. Either select one or multiple rows by clicking Shift while selecting, then once you see the hand icon, you can simply drag and drop them wherever you like. You can easily and quickly rearrange empty rows to clean up your worksheet. Once you have them in one spot, you can right-click and delete them. Similarly, if you want to add extra rows between your data, I like to scroll down where I have empty rows and then just move them where I need them. I prefer this method to inserting new rows. It is just faster. You can do the same with columns, either individually or by selecting multiple at a time. Another way to move rows or columns is through the Google Sheets menu, but it is not as practical. Before I show you how it works, let's add some sample data to the 2 empty rows in our New York City budget. If I select a row with data and go to Edit, Move, I can either move the row up or down. If I move it up, it switches with the row above it. I don't have to move one row at a time. I can select multiple and move them up or down together. Now, moving my empty row 1 down would be cumbersome and would just take too many steps, so I will just manually drag it down. That is exactly why the drag function is so amazing. It is a quick go-to to organizing your worksheet. One thing that I want to show you is that if there is data in the rows that you move, it will no longer be part of any cumulative formulas. The last way to move rows or columns is with our old cut and paste option. Let's select empty row, then either press Command plus X on Mac or Control plus X on PC. You can also go to Edit and scroll down to Cut and paste it with Command or Control V anywhere you like. You can do that one row at a time or multiple all at once. Notice that when you cut rows or columns, the data from these cells will be moved, but the rows, columns still stay where they were. They are just empty. The formulas don't include the cut and moved cells, but still keep the original empty ones. Many people use Excel and Google Sheets files interchangeably. Let's learn how to convert Excel files to Google Sheets, which can be done in a couple of ways. You can either go to the files you have. So I have a couple of files here, and I have CSV file and then Excel file. And I can just take these and actually drag it to my drive. And then I actually can double click on the file. Let's say I'm going to open this file. And what will happen, Google Sheets will open it, either right away convert it for you, or let me show you with the CSV file. If I double click on it, it opens kind of like a preview, and now you can click on the open with at the top and select Google Sheet. Now you can also, if you in your drive, I can go back here and I'm going to go to Google Sheets one more time and blank spreadsheet. You can also go to File at the top and say Open, and here you can select the files that we had, that we imported, or you can say Upload and you can select a file from your device or drag these files to here to open them. There are two main data types in Google Sheets, text and numbers. Numbers can include currency, accounting, percentage, date, and time. Text can also include links and numbers as text. Finally, Google Sheets can also hold Boolean data type, which uses logic. Formatting options lets you control how your data appears in Sheets. Let's revisit our new personal budget worksheet that we have set up. Currently, it's quite basic, but with gradual modification, we can transform it into a powerful analytical tool. Let's start with our first data type, text. Text are words, such as months of the year. By default, text aligns to the left. The second largest data type are numbers, which is unsurprising considering the primary purpose of using Google Sheets and Excel is working with data. Numbers represent count of something, multiples, quantities, scores, measurement, etc. You can have negative and positive numbers and zeros as well. By default, numbers align to the right. You can also change the decimal places by clicking on either of the two icons on the Format toolbar at the top. The 0 with the left arrow decreases decimal places, while the double 0 with the right arrow increases them. This always trips me up, as in Excel it is opposite. By default, Google Sheets adds the 1000 separated, but you can change it by going to Format, Number, Custom Number Format, and remove the 1000 separator in the Custom Formatting box at the top. Currency is a subcategory of a number. It represents monetary values. You can start with plain numbers and then go to the $sign at the formatting toolbar. You can modify the decimal places depending on how much detail you want. If you need another currency than US dollar, go to Format, Number, and scroll down to the very bottom and select Custom Currency. Here you can search for the currency you want and adjust the currency symbol appearance before or after the number or spell it out. When you're satisfied, press the Apply button. Another format that is similar to currency is the accounting format. To select it, go to Format, Number, Accounting. I actually use it more than currency, primarily because I like how the $sign aligns to the left of the cell. It looks much cleaner. Another difference is that zeros are indicated with a dash, so it is easier to spot them in a large data set. Finally, negative numbers are indicated with a parenthesis, which makes them a little easier to spot. You can modify the decimal places as well. The next number types are dates and time. Once you start typing a date in the cell, it recognizes it as a date and will format it that way. Another awesome trick is that once you do that, you can double-click inside the cell to pull up a calendar and then select your date. If you don't like the way Google Sheets formats your dates, you can change that by going to Format, Number, and either select the default or scroll down to Custom Date and Time. The first thing here is to review the available date formats and choose the one that closely resembles what you want. You will be able to semi-modify and finalize the look of it at the top. Select each part of the date formula you want to modify. For example, I can either select the month to be spelled out or abbreviated or represented by a number. You can do the same with the day and year. I consider time to be one of the most tricky numbers to deal with in Google Sheets or Excel, especially when you use it to calculate periods of time or have to use it in formulas. But formatting it is easy. As soon as you start entering any number that represents time, Google Sheets will recognize it and will suggest a default time format. Another thing with time is that what appears in the cell is often only partial of what appears in the formula bar. In the formula bar, you really do see the formatting that is being done behind the scenes. To change the format, go to Format, Number, and either select the default or scroll down to Custom Date and Time. As with dates, you select a format closely similar to what you want, and then you can use the options at the top to customize it further. Another number that is frequently used are percentages. With percentages, it can get tricky when you convert a number to a percentage. If you have numbers listed and you select the percentage icon on the formatting toolbar, what you will get is the multiple of the number, and most likely that's not what you want. In order for the conversion to work, you need to put the number as a decimal, because when you select to format it to percentage, it will make sense. For example, if I type 87 and then change it to percentage, it will become 8,700%, not 87% as I want. So I have to type 0.87 in order for it to become 87%. Once you have the cells formatted as percentage though, before you put in the numbers, you can just type the percentage you want and don't need to type the number as decimal, unless the percentage is a decimal. One unique text formats are links. Google Sheets is smart enough to recognize you're typing a link as soon as you type .com at the end. If I just type Google, the format stays as plain text. However, as soon as I add .com to it, it becomes a link. By universal standards, links are italic, blue, and underlined. You can hover over the link to see three options. You can copy, edit, or remove the link. You can also remove links from multiple cells at once by selecting them, then scrolling all the way down to View More Cell Actions and selecting Remove Link. Finally, Google Sheets and Excel also allows for use of Boolean logic, which uses the logical operators AND, OR, and NOT to calculate values as either true or false. For example, with Boolean logic, we can indicate if something is available, empty, approved, etc. By default, they are aligned in the center of the cell. In some circumstances, you may want to use numbers but want to treat them as text. For example, zip codes, unit codes, social security numbers, phone numbers, or credit card numbers are all examples of numbers that should be treated as text. Additionally, if you want to include zeros before your numbers, there would be another instance of treating numbers as text. By default, Google Sheets treats numbers as numerical values once they are entered. However, if you input a number in a format resembling a phone, a social security number, Google Sheets identifies it and treats it as text. You can see how Google Sheets identified the 125 and 126 here as number and aligned it to right, while the social security and phone numbers it recognized as text and aligned left. If we want to prefix our numbers with zeros, Google Sheets might not permit it initially, but by first formatting the cells as text, going to Format, Number, and selecting Plain Text, then you will have no trouble entering the zeros in front of your number. Another option to converting numbers to text is to enter an apostrophe before a number to make it plain text. Performing calculations on numbers treated as text is usually not possible. It will result in a value error. Let's recap. By default, all data that is text aligns to the left, while by default, all data that is numbers align to the right. Boolean data aligns to center. However, you can manually change the alignment of any of your data type by selecting it and clicking the horizontal alignment icon on the formatting menu. If you receive the formatted worksheet with data, it is hard to tell what data type some of the fields are. You can use the type function to test it. Type, then select the cell to test. Cells with values 1 are numbers, value 2 are text, value 4 are Boolean. After learning all of this, we can go back to our personal budget worksheet, add more data, and change all the numbers to currency, as well as fix the date formatting. Freezing rows or columns in spreadsheets like Google Sheets or Excel allows that a central header stay visible while scrolling through large data sets. This makes it easier to track the information you're looking at. After incorporating additional data in our personal budget, scrolling through it has become challenging as it's easy to lose sight of the expense amount and the corresponding months they relate to. We want to lock certain header rows and columns to help us view the data. To do that, we will freeze them. Select the row you want to freeze and stay in the view. Then go to View, Freeze, then select either the up to row 10, which is the row we selected, or you can select from the two other default options, which is 1 or 2 rows. Now that we have our month's headers frozen, we have to freeze the column with expenses. Select column B, then we will go back to View, Freeze, choose up to the column we selected, which is column B. You also have two default options, 1 or 2 columns. Once we do that, now everything left and up of cell B10 is frozen and available to view while we scroll right or down. To unfreeze either rows or columns or both, we go to View, Freeze, and select No Rows and then do the same for no columns. When you select what you would like locked, you don't have to select the specific row or column. All you have to do is select the cell that is at the cross of where you want the panes to be frozen. So if I select cell B7, the option for me to freeze will be the default 1 or 2 rows or columns and up to row 7 and up to column B. Even though this wasn't that bad of a process, this was the hard way. There is a much easier and awesome way of locking rows and columns. It's the click and drag method. It's amazing. Excel doesn't have that option, and it's truly so quick and convenient. Go to the rectangle between row 1 and column A. You will see thick gray lines. These lines can be clicked and dragged downwards to freeze rows and do the same to columns. When you hover your cursor over these thick gray lines, your cursor will turn into a hand. Click with your mouse or trackpad, then drag it down to where you want the row to be locked. Then I will do the same with the column. And voila, that was so much easier and faster than going through the menu. What is even better is that I can easily adjust the frozen pane by moving the locked column or row to a new position. Now to unfreeze the locked rows and columns, all you have to do is drag them back to the left and top, and voila, they disappear. It takes literally 5 seconds to freeze and unfreeze panes in Google Sheets. One thing I wanted to show you that you may come across is when you try to freeze rows or columns, you may get an error message saying, there was a problem, sorry you can't freeze columns which contain part of a merged cell. Click OK. All it is saying is that part of what you're trying to freeze includes merged cells. You have to unmerge them first. Go to the formatting toolbar and select the merge option, scroll down to unmerge. Once you do that, now you will be able to lock the panes in that position. As you add more content to your spreadsheets, you can reorganize your data by sorting it either alphabetically or numerically. But there are a few pitfalls you need to know about so you can avoid them and the sort to work properly. Before we get started, we're going to freeze the top row and move the category column C before the description of expenses in column B. To show you exactly what happens when we use the sorting options, I will color code few of the top and bottom rows so you can tell how sorting can affect the data. Let's use the sort option. Go to Data, sort sheet. You will have two options to choose from: ascending A to Z increasing order or descending Z to A decreasing order. Notice that it tells us that it will sort the sheet by column B, as that is where our cursor is. We didn't specify which column we want to sort our data. It assumed it based on our position. When I selected the ascending option, our data got sorted. But it also sorted our debt and savings rows at the very bottom, which we didn't want to include in the sort of all expenses. Let's go back and select the rows that we want to sort. We only want row 10 to row 54. I will select the ascending sort sheet option again. That changed nothing. Everything got sorted, including the debt and saving rows, even though I didn't select them. The reason why is that the sort sheet option sorts everything on that tab, entire worksheet. You can't select only a section to sort. The way to sort only part of your data is to use the sort range option. However, you also have to avoid few pitfalls. I'm going to select my column B and go to Data, Sort Range. Similarly, I have an ascending and descending options for my selected column B. Even though my lower row for debt and savings were not included in the sort, another problem occurred. My January through December columns were not sorted, so now the expense categories don't correspond to the correct numbers. The reason why is that you have to specify the entire range to sort, all the rows and columns you want to include. Once we do that though, we don't have the option to sort by column B, only column A, which is the first column in our range. If you want to select a different column, scroll down to Advanced Range Sorting Options. Here we can specify which column we want to use for sorting. If you have headers like we do, you want to make sure you check that option, otherwise the first row will also be sorted. Now everything was beautifully sorted, only the selected rows and all the corresponding columns. Perfect. However, even though our categories in column B were sorted, our expenses in column C are not. With the sorting range option, you can add multiple sorting columns. You can sort first by categories and then by expenses and any other additional column you want. At any point, you can also delete one of the sorting columns. Everything looks great now. Notice how columns right of column O were not sorted as they were not part of the selection. Until now, we sorted text, but you can also do the same with numbers and dates. One note of caution: your sort may sometimes not work on numbers, but there is a reason why and we can easily fix it. If I try to sort my amounts in the January column, it is not sorted right. The $1,050 is before $100 and $280 before $30. I do not have the same issue though when I sort my data in the February column. Everything is sorted correctly. The reason why is that when I check the data type in column D and E, the January numbers are stored as text. That is why the sort option doesn't do it correctly. The way to fix it is to convert the January data to numbers such as currency. Once we do that, the sort option works perfectly. Before you can finalize your worksheet, you may have to clean up some data. I'm going to show you 3 different ways you can do that. So you can see in our worksheet there's some issues. I can see that there's some misspellings. There's also some white space before, after, or in between some words. And there'll be also some duplications that I'll show you in a second. So the first thing you can do is basically you can spell check your worksheet. Like with any other document, it's very important to spell check it. So the way to do it is go to Tools, Spelling, and Spell Check. Once you do that, the spell checker will bring up all the words with spelling errors. You can change them individually or you can select Change All if you know that the same word is being misspelled in multiple places. You can also ignore any words that are found as misspelled, but maybe they do have a correct spelling. It's just the spell checker doesn't recognize it. You can ignore these. Once it's finished, you can spell check the other worksheet or just close it out. The second thing you can do is trim the white spaces before the words, after the words, in between, because the words are not lined up. They just look messy. So the way to do it is go to Data, Data Cleanup, Trim White Space. However, when I did that, it told me, whoa, we found white space in one cell, which I know it's not correct. I know that there are more errors in this worksheet because I didn't select a range. So I have to actually specify what I want to cleaned up. So I can select Command A on Mac or Control A on PC to select the entire tab. Once I do that, if I select the Trim White Space now, it did find 20 cells with extra white space. And now you can see that it cleaned up pretty well. It's already looking much better. Finally, the last thing we can do is remove any duplicates. Now, I'm going to show you how this works by just selecting 5 rows, color coding it, so you can see what happens to the data when we remove duplicates. Now if I go to Data, Cleanup, and Remove Duplicates, it says it didn't find anything because we didn't select a range. So I'm going to select a range. And now if I go to Data, Cleanup, Remove Duplicates, you have an option to specify whether your data has headers, so headers are going to be treated differently. Then if you want to check uniqueness for each of the columns or all. And I'm going to just leave it for all and select Remove Duplicates. When I did that, it found 6 duplicate rows, and there are 50 unique ones left. Now, I only did color coding for 5 rows, so how come it had 6 rows? Because I had some blank rows at the bottom, and there were 2 of them, so one was considered a duplicate. Now let's go back to our copied rows, and now I'm going to change some data for January in 3 of the rows. Now let's see how the remove duplicates option works now. Now if I select it and leave everything checked, all the columns have to be checked for uniqueness. What it does, it basically says that only 2 rows were duplicates because the other 3, everything was the same except January data. So that was considered a uniqueness for these rows. So that's why they were not removed. If, on the other hand, we uncheck column D with the January data, the column with the unique data points, all the 5 rows will be found as duplicates and be deleted. So that's definitely something to watch out for. Sum is one of the most frequently used formulas in Google Sheets and Excel. However, sometimes it can cause double counting. That can easily be fixed by using the subtotal function instead. So we have our personal budget worksheet here, and we want to sum the expenses by each category. So I'm going to use the sum function and add up the subtotal for each of the category for home, food, utilities, and transportation. The way to do it, you just do equal sum, and then you specify the range. Now, if you try to copy and paste the formula, be aware that some of the categories are smaller. They might only have 2 rows instead of 4, so you might have to adjust the range. Now if I'm going to use the sum function to calculate the grand total, but the sum function not only includes the single categories, it also includes the subcategory totals. So what happens is it double counts. To fix this, you might try to do it manually and select each of the subcategory totals in your formula, but that's tedious and it can also lead to mistakes. By using the subtotal functions, we can solve this problem. What we are going to do, instead of using the sum formulas, we're just going to replace them with subtotal functions. The syntax include function code and a range. The function code is a number that determines what operation the subtotal function will be performing on your data. Number 9, which is for sum, is the one that is most frequently used. So for our formula, what we have to do equal subtotal, then put number 9 for sum, comma, and then we want to specify the range. The ranges will be identical to what we had in our sum function. At the very end, when we want to calculate the grand total, we will also use the subtotal function. So now we're going to say subtotal, then put the code 9 for sum, and then we're going to select the entire range from row 3 to row 20. And you can see that the total is correct. And so what happens is that the subtotal function ignores the other subtotals, so it doesn't double count. Now I want to show you one more thing to be aware of for both functions actually. Let's say I have some new healthcare information data and I want to add it to my expenses. So what happens is I move the data here. So in column D it has the sum function, in column E it has the subtotal function. So what happens is if I double check my sum grand total, you can see because I manually chose rows before, it's missing the healthcare subtotal. However, in my subtotal function, it works perfectly because it is part of the subtotal range. Now, this worked like that because the healthcare information was inserted in the middle of the data set. However, if I put it at the very end, below transportation totals, I would also have to adjust the range for the subtotal. So you want to just double check when you enter new data that the ranges include all the information. Once you start working on large worksheets, At some point, either for presentation's sake, readability, or print layout, you may want to hide or group certain rows and/or columns. Although similar, they work a bit differently and serve different purposes. To hide a row, select it, then right-click and scroll down to Hide Row. You can select rows to hide individually, but that's inefficient. To unhide the hidden rows, click on the tiny up and down arrows on the left of the row numbers. Once you unhide, you clear the hiding option. To select multiple rows to hide, press Shift while selecting. To select multiple rows that are non-consecutive, press Command on Mac or Control on PC while selecting. Then right-click and select Hide Rows. What I like about this is that Google Sheet is smart to recognize not to hide all of the rows together, but keep them separate in small groups. I'm also going to hide few rows at the bottom of our worksheet. If you have many hidden rows or columns, instead of having to unhide them individually by clicking the tiny arrows, you can select rows before the first selection and after, and then right-click to unhide all. Hiding is okay if you want to quickly conceal content for printing or safeguarding sensitive information. However, it is hard to identify the hidden rows and columns. Additionally, once you unhide the data, you would need to repeat the process to hide again, which is inefficient. Grouping is an alternative to hiding. It provides clearer visibility of hidden content and is a better choice for a more permanent organization. It offers a more efficient way to reveal and conceal your data quickly. To group rows, select them, then right-click and scroll down all the way to view more row actions. Then select the group option. This is a bit cumbersome. If you click on the minus square next to the grouped rows, they will collapse. Another way to group, which is a little faster, is by going to View, Group Selected Rows. But even this way can be cumbersome if you have to make many groups. So you can use the keyboard shortcut. Now, don't try to remember it. Just go to View, Group menu, and you will see the shortcut for your computer. You can use that for the next few groups you have to make. In my case, since I am on Mac, my shortcut is Shift, Option, Arrow right. If you have a PC, it's Alt, Shift, Right arrow. Once I'm able to use the shortcut, it is a very fast process. Once I created all these groups, they are all open. And if I want to collapse them all, I would have to keep clicking on these tiny minuses. That's too much work for me. And then if I needed to expand them all, clicking on each one just makes me a little frustrated. Well, there is a faster way to expand and collapse them all at once. Right-click on the minus or plus and select Expand All Row Groups to have all the rows visible. Wow, that was so easy and fast. I like that. You can also do the other way, right-click and collapse all row groups all at once. These options are super helpful for large data sets. Another thing you can control is where the expand, collapse, plus or minus signs is. You can position it up or down. I personally like having it down, similar to Excel, because I use both software frequently. I like to keep it consistent. Now with grouping, you can create hierarchy of information. We can group all the subgroup expenses so that we only see the grand total expense number. To remove any group, you can right-click on it and select Remove Group. All the hiding and grouping options work the same way for columns. I can select multiple and then use the same keyboard shortcut to group it. You can see how clean my worksheet looks, and I still have all the data. It is just collapsed from view. It is a perfect summary of all the information. Now to remove all the groups individually is tedious. You can try selecting all rows before and after all the groups, right-click and select Remove Group, but that doesn't work. The way to do it is through the menu. Once selected, go to View, Group, and Group Rows. Most of the time this works perfectly, but sometimes what it does, for some reason it converts the groups to hidden rows, which I already know how to select all and unhide everything. Formatting data is not only for the looks. It improves your data readability and helps your audience find the important stuff without data overload. In the next few videos, we will format our personal budget worksheet to this final stage with few easy formatting tricks. Before we get started, let's clear all the formatting. This is a useful feature when you get a worksheet that has too much going on and you want to start fresh. Select all with Command+A on Mac or Control+A on PC, or click the Select All button in the top left corner between row 1 and column A. Then go to Format, scroll all the way down to Clear Formatting. When you do that, everything returns to default settings, including font and text styling, any customized color change to the standard black, as well as any alignments are reset. To fix the cell adjustment, select all again and double-click on one row and one column to adjust the cell sizing to fit the data. Then I will adjust sizes of few columns manually. Some things we have to change manually, like removing groups by going to View, Group, Ungroup, and then unhiding any rows by right-clicking and selecting Unhide Rows. This is what we will start with, a very plain-looking worksheet that we will transform to a sleek and professional-looking file. When I start formatting a worksheet, the first thing I like to change is the font. Select all, then go to the font icon on the formatting toolbar. You have a list of the most recently used fonts as well as few others. The default font is Arial. I will select Nunito. While everything is still selected, I will increase the font to 11 points. You can use the plus and minus to change the sizing or manually enter what you want in the square displaying the current size. Let's actually go back to the font, and I want to show you how you can also add more fonts to Google Sheets. Select the More Fonts option at the top. You have a list here of additional fonts, or you can search for more by selecting the Show All Fonts options and selecting the type of font you want to narrow down the selection. I will select monospace fonts, which have equal space for all characters. Once I have a list, I can select few I want to add to my font list in the formatting toolbar. After the font is added, it will be in the font list and I can easily select it. You can also change the color of your text by selecting the letter A on the formatting toolbar. The most readable font is black, and that is what I always use, but I do sometimes change the color of my headings to another dark color like blue. You have the standard color palette here, as well as an option to add your custom colors. Once you add the custom color here, they will be available throughout Google Sheets. Let's add formatting to our headings by making them bold and larger. You don't have to select everything or make only individual selections for formatting. You can select individual rows and columns by pressing Command on Mac or Control on PC while you're making the selection. You can see how I selected many rows all at once. Surprisingly enough, if you let go of the Command or Control button, the current selection stays selected, and if you press it again, you can just keep adding to your ranges. Once I selected all the heading rows and columns, I will either select the letter B on the formatting toolbar or use the universal Command+B on Mac or Control+B on PC. I want to merge the personal budget title at the top, but before we do so, let's go over how the merge formatting works. When you are merging items in your worksheet, you can merge columns horizontally, merge rows vertically, or merge all in both directions. Let's go through a few examples. To merge text across 3 columns, you select it, then go to the merge icon on the formatting toolbar and select your merge type. Since I selected 3 columns only, I only have 2 options, which would produce the same result: merge horizontally or merge all. When I want to merge text across 3 columns and 3 rows, first I will select and span it across the desired area. On the merge menu, now I can merge it vertically, which will produce merge down the rows. I can go back and select unmerge to clear that. I can also merge it horizontally, but that will produce merge only across the columns. So to merge both horizontally and vertically, I have to select the merge all option. The last example just shows you how to merge only vertically down the rows. After all this knowledge, I will go back to our personal budget and merge the title horizontally across all the months. But when I do that, even though the text is merged, it still aligns to the left. We will learn how to change the alignment to center next. Let's go through the text alignment options in Google Sheets. You can align text and numbers either horizontally, vertically, or both. The horizontal alignment specifies whether you want to align text in a cell to the left, center, or right. With the vertical alignment, you can align text in a cell at the top, middle, or bottom. By default, both text and numbers align at the bottom vertically, but text aligns to the left horizontally, while numbers align to the right horizontally. Of course, that's just the default, and you can change all the alignments of all data and text in 9 different ways with these 6 options. Let's go through a few examples. I'm going to align the first set of 3 cells to the left horizontally by selecting them, then going to the formatting toolbar and selecting left under the horizontal alignment menu. Then I will center text horizontally for the next 3 cells. And finally, choose alignment to the right in the last 3 cells. We will do the same with the vertical alignment. Select the first 3 cells at the top, go to the vertical alignment icon on the formatting toolbar and select top. Then I will align text in the middle vertically for the next 3 set of cells and align text to the bottom for the last 3. That's a lot of alignment choices that you have. We can go back to our title in the personal budget worksheet and align its center horizontally across the months. I don't need to change its vertical alignment because it is only in one very narrow row, so it won't make much difference. Let's format some of our data and copy and paste the formatting to other places. First, we're going to de-emphasize and organize some of the expenses data. I will reduce its size and make it italic by selecting the slanted I on the formatting toolbar or using the keyboard shortcut Command+I on Mac or Control+I on PC. I am going to group the individual expenses under each expenses category by going to View, Group, Group Rows, or use the grouping shortcut, which is listed in the menu. Now there are 2 ways of copying and pasting formatting. I'm going to copy my row and go to selected below. If I just pasted it, it would not only paste the style, but also overwrite the data there. So what I want to do is paste only the style by going to Edit, Paste Special, and select Format Only. I can see that the keyboard shortcut is listed next to the selection, which is what I will be using for the next few rows. What is great with this option is that not only the size, italic style was pasted, but also the rows were grouped like the one I copied. The second way to copying and pasting formatting is with a fantastic tool called Paint Format. It is located on the right of the printer icon on the toolbar. To use it, you select the style you want to copy, then press the Paint Format icon, and then go to the place you want to paste the style. It acts like the paste format only option. One thing I don't like about it though is that I have to keep reselecting the style I want to copy and paste. From the 2 options, I like using the paste special format only option but with the use of keyboard shortcut because it is the fastest. Again, you don't need to memorize it, just go to the menu and see what it is for your computer when you need to use it. Next, we will learn how to either add fill colors to headings or use the alternating colors for our rows. To emphasize and organize your headings and improve data readability, you can either apply different fill colors or use alternating color format for rows. I'm going to color code the main cash flow rows in blue by selecting and then going to the Paint Can icon. The color palette appears, which is the same for all options in Google Sheets. Often when I select a color, it is a bit too dark, making the text hard to read. So I go back and select the Custom Plus option, which will let me adjust the color. I use the slide for a lighter version of the color. You can also use the eyedropper to select color from anywhere on your screen. Then I'm going to use the Paint Format to paste the fill color to few other rows with similar data. I will add a light green fill colors to my cash inflow and savings headings and light pink to the debt and expenses headings. I try to keep the colors consistent with meaning, so I use shades of red or pink for negative or debt items and green or blue for positive financial numbers. I also want to show you an option that you may prefer using to manually choosing the fill colors. Select the cells you want to format, then go to Format and scroll down to Alternating Colors. This is a quick way to add alternating colors to dataset with many rows. It improves data readability. Here you can specify whether your data has a header. You can use from any of the predefined styles or create your own custom style. I often would choose a color that I'm already using and then just lower its shade. This option is very quick and easy, and you can see how quickly it was applied to all my rows. At times, you may want to rotate your text either to maximize the space that you have, improve data organization, or to create a more interesting layout. In our example, I want to rotate the bank, income, and expenses title on the side of each section to establish a visual hierarchy. Before we do that, let's go through the text rotation options. By default, all text has no text rotation. If you want to change any rotated text to the default, select the text, go to the A icon with an arrow underneath, and select the first option from the left. You can tilt up or tilt down your text, which is useful when you have longer column titles but need to keep them narrow. The tilt makes an efficient use of space. The stack vertically option is the least readable in my opinion. There's too much spacing between the letters. Maybe changing font would help. However, the rotate up or rotate down options are much better. The rotate up option for English-speaking audience is very readable, and that is what I will use in our personal budget worksheet. If these options are not sufficient, you can also specify your very own angle. I'm going to go to the 3 titles, select them, first merge them across the rows I want them to span, then apply center to the horizontal alignment and middle to the vertical one, and then select my text rotation to rotate up. I can use the Paint format to copy and paste the formatting to the income title. However, I can't do that to the expenses because it will be spanning across more rows, so I have to manually style it as I did the bank title. Once it is done, I will increase its size so it fills the merged cells better. And there you have it. This simple formatting trick made each section in our personal budget stand out. Text wrapping in Google Sheets or Excel is useful because it ensures that long pieces of text fit neatly inside cells, making them visible and preventing them from overflowing into other cells. Here I have 3 lines of text in 3 rows. Right now, all 3 overflow through 2 columns. The default option for all text is the overflow option. To change that, you go to the formatting toolbar and select the text wrapping icon. The first one on the left is overflow, which means the text flows through all space unless there is data in the columns next to it. If I select the clip option, which is the one on the far right, the text gets clipped at the end of the column. It won't spill over to another column, even if the column is empty. The clip option is great for URL addresses, as they are often very long, but you don't need to see the whole text. Finally, the middle option is to wrap text. This option is used very often when you need more space in your row or column, so you will wrap the text to fit the cell. It doesn't spill over empty columns, but adjusts the size of the cell to fit it. You can see row 7's height has increased to fit the text. In our personal budget, if we narrow down the expense description column, some of the text will be cut off. By default, the text overflows, but there is data in the next column, so you don't see it. If I wrap it, the row's height increases to fit the text. If I clip it, it will look like the overflow option. You can't tell the difference because there's data in the next column, but if that column was empty, you would see no text with the clip option, but would see the text spilling over with the default overflow one. Can you tell the difference between this and that view? Let me do that again. There is a small difference between the two. Gridlines. I like to work in Google Sheets and Excel with gridlines, but before I finalize my worksheet or if I want to print it, I like to remove them by going to View, Show, and uncheck the gridlines option. It adds a clean, professional look to your worksheet. Now, sometimes when you work with grid lines, you may not realize that some of your cells have borders. Only when you print or PDF your file, you may notice them, or maybe not even then. If you find unexpected borders in your worksheet, you can uncheck the grid lines view option first and remove the borders individually, but that would be inefficient. So an easier option is to select all, then go to borders icon and select the clear borders option in the bottom right corner. If you don't have grid lines, you can use borders to emphasize and organize your worksheet. For example, you can frame certain area by selecting it and then clicking on the outer border option. You can change the color and thickness of the line to add pizzazz, or maybe not, as it may be just too much. One really great use for borders is when you can't or don't want to use colors. They can help you emphasize main points in your data and make it more readable. I have a plain personal budget section here. I can select the main summary rows and select the outer border option to make them stand out. This subtle change creates a striking effect. The important data just pops. Let's quickly go over the other options under borders. There are 2 rows of options. The top row adds borders in your entire selection, while the bottom one adds borders to the outer layer of your selection. When I make a large selection, I can add borders to all the cells. I can also add borders to the inner cells, so everywhere except the outside frame. In some instances, the horizontal and vertical options are also very helpful and can add to the readability of your worksheet. For the second row option, we will select the smaller section of our data. These options are for adding left, top, right, and bottom borders to the outside of your selection, so you won't apply to the inner cells. Many experienced Google Sheet and Excel users remove grid lines or use few borders to make their worksheet look clean, sleek, and professional. And now you can also use this trick. There are a number of ways you can move around Google Sheets, along with a range of shortcuts you can use to speed up various tasks such as navigating, selecting, and formatting. Let's start with the basics. You can use either your mouse or trackpad to scroll left and right or up and down to different sections of your worksheet. You can also click and point to make a selection and perform a calculation, organize, or format your data or text. To select a range, you can click and drag with your mouse or your trackpad. At any point, you can access different options by right-clicking on the selection. These options will vary depending on what you select. Many of these options can also be accessed through the regular menu at the top. You will be amazed at how much faster you can work when you know only a couple of shortcuts. You can access all the shortcuts by going to Help and scrolling down to Keyboard Shortcuts. Since Google Sheet is a web-based tool, a lot of the keyboard shortcuts that are available in Excel are not available and you need to enable them. Make sure the Enable Compatible Spreadsheet Shortcuts option is selected and is green. Most of the shortcuts from Mac utilize the Command button, while Control key is used for PC machines a lot. In Google Help Center, you can find an even more comprehensive list and summary of shortcuts for each machine. Personally, I find the quickest way to find the shortcut is to go to the menu and find what you want to do. Any shortcuts for the action that are available will be listed on the right of the menu option. It is good to remember shortcuts that you use daily, but there is really no need to try to memorize the ones you use very sporadically, such as grouping rows. Let's start with the most frequently used and universal shortcuts. To copy something, make a selection, then press Command+C on Mac or Control+C on PC. From now on, I will just be saying the Mac shortcuts, but know that if you're using a PC machine, you might have to press the Control instead of the Command button. To paste something, press Command-V. This type of pasting pastes everything: format, values, and formulas. To paste only formats or values, use the Paste Special option and find the shortcuts for that. One of the most useful shortcuts is the Undo button. If you make a mistake or change your mind, press Command+Z. On the other hand, if you press Command+Y, you redo the previous action. Another action similar to copying is cutting with Command+X. However, when you cut and then paste the selection somewhere else, you actually are moving it from the previous place. There are also several universal formatting shortcuts. After you make a selection, you can use the Command+B to make text or data bold. To underline anything, press Command+U and use Command+I to make things italic. To remove the italic, underlined, or bold formats, just use the shortcuts again. There are also a few general shortcuts that can perform certain worksheet actions. To open a new or another file, you can use Command+O, and if you press Escape, you will cancel that action and go back to your worksheet. Another universal shortcut is Command+P to print your file. You may think Command+S would save your file, and that is the case for most software. However, if you go to the menu File option, there is no option to save because Google Sheets automatically saves every change made to the spreadsheet. Finally, if you use Command+F, you can search your file for text or number in your worksheet. If I search for home, I will see all the instances where it is found in the worksheet on the current tab. Shortcuts speed up your work and increase productivity, but also knowing them is very helpful when you find yourself without a mouse or a trackpad. To access the menu without a mouse, press Ctrl plus Option plus F. Then use the arrows to go through the menu options. Once you find the menu options you want, press Enter to select it. Now let's make some selections with our keyboard only. To select everything, use Command plus A. The first time you press it, an entire area up to any empty rows is selected. If you press Command plus A again, your entire sheet will be selected. Finally, the third time you use that shortcut, everything will be unselected. To move around the worksheet, you can use left, right, up, or down arrows. If you don't just want to move around the sheet, but rather select a range, press the Shift button while you're using the arrows to define it. This is very helpful, but if you want to select a large area, it can be a bit tedious. So you can speed up the process by pressing both Command plus Shift while you're using the arrows. If you over-select an area, let go of the Command button and just use Shift and arrow to narrow down your selection. Another very helpful shortcut for large worksheet is the Command plus Home to go to the beginning of the sheet or Command plus End to go to the end. What is even more helpful is being able to select the data in a row by pressing Shift plus Space once and pressing it again to select the entire row. The third time you press it, you cancel the selection. Similarly, you can select the column with Ctrl plus Space, and if you press it again, you select the entire column. You can often combine shortcuts to make larger selection. For example, pressing Shift plus Space selects the row, and once that is selected, I can press Ctrl plus Space to select all the columns for the selection. If you do that one more time, you select the entire personal budget area. Finally, you will rarely have a file with just one tab. To quickly go to the tab left or right, use Option plus arrow down or up. You don't have to use all these newly learned shortcuts right away. Just pick the ones you like and use often. Later, you can keep adding new ones. Soon enough, you'll be Google Sheets speed demon. In order to avoid errors and mistakes in calculations in Google Sheets or Excel, you have to understand the difference between relative, absolute, and mixed references. Cell reference is the cell address, which is a combination of the column letter and row number. So for example, this cell is at the cross of column D and row 3. So its address is D3. The value of D3 is $25. On the other hand, the address for this cell is C7 because it is at the cross of column C and row 7. The value of C7 is 40. Since we now understand the cell addresses, we can reference them in our formulas. References are used in formulas to perform calculations. It tells Google Sheets or Excel where to look for the value you want to use in your formula. Let's start with the relative references. We are going to use this employee data example. If I want to calculate the salary for Brian, I have to multiply the hours worked in C3 by hourly rate of $25 in cell D3. I will also multiply this by 52 weeks to get an annual number. So Brian earned $26,000 during the year. I can copy the formula down to find the salary for the other employees by either grabbing the fill handle in the lower right corner and dragging it down, or I can just double-click on the bottom right corner to have the formula autofill. By default, all cell references are relative references. When copied across multiple cells, they change based on the relative position of rows and columns. When you click on a cell and select the formula bar, the reference cells in the formula are highlighted with surrounding dashes. Let's double check the formulas copied correctly and results make sense. When I check the salary for Max, I can see that it's referencing C4 and D4, which is correct. Because the E3 formula moved one row down, all the references are also one row down. The same is true for Garrett. The formula now references C5 and D5 because the formula moved to E5. If we look at the formulas for column E, you can see how the cell references change the row numbers, although the columns stay constant. When you don't want cell references to change when you copy a formula, then you have to lock its reference by adding a $sign before the column, row, or both. That's called absolute reference. Let's go to an example. If we want to calculate 5% bonus for Brian, we would take the annual salary and multiply it by 5% in cell G1, which would equal 1,300 in bonus for Brian. However, when I copy the formula down, we get many errors, and the values just don't make sense. Some of the error messages mention that our formula is referencing text rather than a number, so it can't perform my calculation. When I check the bonus calculation for Max, I can see that it's referencing E4, Max's salary, which is correct. However, it is also referencing cell G2, which is the bonus heading for column G, rather than what we want, which is the 5% bonus amount. Now the calculation G5 is referencing G3, which is the bonus amount for Brian, rather than 5% bonus in cell G1. The reason for these errors is that cell G1 is set as a relative reference in our formula. We have to lock G1 cell reference, so when we copy it down, it stays absolute as cell G1. We can do that by adding a $ to G1. Select it, then press either F4 or function plus F4 on your keyboard to add the $. Once we do that and copy the formulas down, we can see that all of them are making sense. When we check the cell references, the salary amount stays relative and moves down the rows, but the 5% stays absolute for all the employees. Now to calculate the total salary, with the bonus, we will use relative references by adding salary and bonus columns and copying it down. Sometimes you may need to mix absolute and relative cell references for columns and rows. The multiplication table is a perfect example for mixed references. Let's start creating our formula. I know I need to multiply 1 in cell B4 by each of the numbers across in row 3. So I will enter the formula B4 times C3. Now if I copy over the formula, I can see that the results really don't make sense. 6 times 1 is definitely not equal to 720. When I check the cell references, I can see that B4 reference is not fixed, but rather keeps moving right. So I know now that I have to lock column B. I don't want to lock the row number, as that will be moving down later to multiply by 2, 3, 4, etc. I will go back to my cell, select B4, and click F4 to rotate through the absolute reference options. I need $B and the number 4, which indicates locked column B and relative row. Now when I copy the formula across, I can tell all the calculations are correct. However, when I copy it down, the calculations don't make sense again. What's happening? Let's take a look. When I look at the formula for 4 times 8, I can see that it is referencing locked column B and relative row 7, but it is incorrectly referencing cell J6 instead of J3. So I know that I have to lock row 3 while leaving the column relative. I'm going to go back to my formula in C4 again, and now I will rotate through the absolute reference for cell C3 until I see $3 to keep the row locked. Now when I copy the formula right and down, it works perfectly. Finally, the trick in error-free spreadsheet is deciding before you copy a formula what cells references in the formula you want to keep relative and what you want to be absolute. Just take your time and test it out to see whether it makes sense. Google Sheets has over 400 predefined functions that perform calculations using specific syntax and arguments. The typical function syntax consists of equal, then the function name, and in parentheses you have arguments. Functions can have required and optional arguments. When you don't include an argument that is required, you will receive an error. Some optional arguments have a default or can be omitted and the function works just fine without it. The formula bar at the top will show the function or formula in your selected cell, as well as you can see it when you enter the cell. There are several ways you can access Google Sheet list of functions. The first way is to select the functions icon on the very right of the formatting toolbar. Starting at the very top are the most frequently used functions such as sum, average, count, max, and min. When you scroll down, you can see categories for many other functions. When you select the Learn More at the very bottom, you will be redirected to the Google Sheets function list that can be searched and provide you more detail on each function. You can also access this function list from the menu by going to Help, Function List at the very bottom. Let's take a look at an example with the sum function. When you start typing its name as part of the formula, you will see any other functions that also start with the letters SUM. This is to help you find what you're looking for. Once you select sum, you will have a small blue question mark on the left of its name that says Turn on Formula Help, press F1. When you click on it, a small Formula Help pop-up appears that tells you what is the syntax for the function as well as few examples of how to use it. If you select Learn More at the bottom again, a much larger pop-up with sample usage, syntax, and notes appears. When you scroll to the very bottom of the pop-up, you can often find an example that Google Sheets provides to explain how to use the function. This is super helpful. Further down, you can select to open the pop-up in a new, much larger window, which is helpful when you don't want it covering part of your worksheet, but you want to keep it open as a reference. One hidden gem is the option to actually open the Google Sheet example in a new worksheet so that you can test it out and see exactly how the function works. Let's use the 10 most frequently used functions in Google Sheets. I have our personal budget selected list of expenses here, and I want to calculate the sum for each month. I will type equal, then sum, and per the sample usage, I can either list the items separately with a comma, but that's limited to 30 items, or select a range, which is the best practice. Now I can copy over the formula to the other months. If you want to find the average for each of the expenses, you can use the average function. Same as with the sum function, you can select items individually or specify the range. I'm going to copy it down and then delete it from any empty rows. Two other popular functions are the min and max, which find either the smallest or largest item in your range. You can use the absolute values here, but I just manually reselected the ranges. If you have an empty cell, all three functions will ignore it, but when you have a 0, they include it as part of the calculations. At any point when you're working with formulas and functions, you can select the cell and click on the formula bar to see which cells and ranges are included. This is a very important part of quality control, checking and rechecking your work. Two also useful functions are today and now. They are helpful especially when you want to have a timestamp for your worksheet or printout and for project management. When you type today and empty parentheses, today's date will appear. It is a dynamic function, which means it will be updated every time you open your worksheet. You can use it as part of a calculation, such as by adding 30 days to it, etc. The now function is very similar, but the main difference is that it provides a more detailed timestamp, including date and time to the second. You can also use it in calculations. If you need to count cells with numeric values, you can use the count function and select the range to count. It counts cells with zeros, but won't count any empty cells. Often though, you need to count cells with text. If you copy over the count function to count the list of different expenses in your worksheet, it will result in 0 because the count function only counts numbers. It doesn't recognize text. To count cells with text, you have to change the count function to count A by adding the letter A to the end. However, this function does not only count any cells with text, it counts any non-empty cells. So if you have a number in a cell, it will be counted also. There are 3 logical functions that you should learn how to use as they are very helpful and can be combined with many other functions. For example, if you wanted to indicate in our worksheet the largest expenses, we can create a function that does that. The if function has 3 arguments. The condition that you want to test, so we will test where the average amount is more than $250. Then the second argument is what you want to be done when that is true. So in our case, we will want to have a text that labels that row as big expense. And the last argument is what you want to do when the condition is false. In our case, we will do nothing. So we will put 2 apostrophes to indicate to leave the cell as blank. Now I can quickly tell that mortgage, groceries, car payment, and health insurance are my largest expenses. With the if function, you not only can combine it with other functions, but you can also nest another if function inside it. Instead of the last argument, if false, we can add another if function and say that for average expenses over 150 now, to be marked as medium expenses. And if the average is smaller, to leave it as blank. Finally, the AND and OR function in Sheets and Excel are Boolean logic functions. You can use them to evaluate multiple conditions and return a true or false result. For example, if we want to test conditions where the average is over $100 and minimum is equal to 0, we can say equal, then and place the two conditions in the parentheses. You can have many conditions listed here. What you are testing is where both conditions are true to return true, but if either of the condition is not true, to return false as a result. Now I can see that my car repair and maintenance expenses meet both conditions. I have an average that is over 100, but there is either one or more months where the total for this expense was 0. With the OR function, I am also testing these two arguments, but it will result in a true when either one of them is true. So I know that I can expect more true results than with my AND function. And that is exactly what happened. For example, my doctor expenses were on average over $204 each month, which is more than my argument of over $100, but I never had a month with 0 doctor expenses. However, since this function has an OR argument, I only had to have one of the conditions met. With these 10 functions, you can tackle many problems and calculations in Google Sheets. You don't often find Google Sheets or Excel files with only one tab. More often than not, worksheets have many tabs that are interconnected and reference data between each other. Additionally, you can have links to other files. Let's start by learning how to organize and manage files with multiple tabs. To add more tabs, click the plus sign in the lower left corner that's labeled Add Sheets. Most people call these rectangular labels tabs rather than sheets, as when people say sheets, they usually mean an entire worksheet or a file. Once you press the plus sign, you will get a new tab right of your active tab, which is highlighted in light blue. To delete a tab, click on the down arrowhead next to the tab name and select Delete. You will get a warning asking you whether you are sure about deleting it. You can always undo if you make a mistake. To rename a tab, double-click on it and start typing a new name. You actually can have symbols in your name, but best practice is to avoid it if you can. Names can also be more than one word, and you can have spaces between words. At some point, you may have many tabs that are disorganized. To move a tab left or right, you can click on the downward arrow and select Move Right or Left, which is not a big deal when you have to move the tab one or couple of spaces, but some worksheets can have dozen tabs, and that would be very tedious. So a much better and easier option is to click on a tab and drag it wherever you like. This is so much easier and quicker. Now, that is useful, but having very many tabs and often different type of information on them, it is helpful being able to color code them. Right-click or select the down arrow and go to Change Color. If you have a group of tabs that you want to change color of, you don't have to do that individually. You can select one, then press Shift and select the last one in your group, and then go to Change Color for that set. Sometimes you have files with many tabs and only few of them you are actively working on and would like to hide the ones that you want to keep but don't need to see. You can right-click on the tab you want to hide and select Hide Sheet. To unhide it, go to View, Hidden Sheets, and select the one you want to unhide. Be aware that anyone who has access to your file will be able to unhide them. Editors can unhide them, and viewers that make a copy of your file will be able to unhide them as well. Another way to access all your tabs are the 3 bars next to the plus sign on the left, which says All Sheets. This is a quick way to access all the tabs, especially if you have a lot of them. All the ones that are hidden are in a faint gray color. If you click on it, it unhides the tab. One option that I use a lot, is duplicating tabs. Right-click on the tab you want to make a copy of and select Duplicate. I use this a lot because I like to reformat and play around with my data. So in order to feel free to do that, I like to use a copy so my original stays safe. Sometimes you may want to move one of your tabs to a completely new file. You can right-click on it and select Copy to either New or Existing Spreadsheet. I'm going to choose a new file. In Excel, you have an option to move a tab completely, but in Google Sheets, you are actually duplicating it. So the original stays in the original file and you are just making a copy. You get a warning message with a link to the newly created file. Once I am there, I will give it a new name. You often have important information on different tabs, and you need to reference it somewhere else in the worksheet. There are 2 ways of doing it. I have a list of top 15 global companies here, and I want to have a summary of their sales, profits, assets, and market value on this one summary tab. The problem is that I have each of these data points on multiple tabs. You may say, well, you can just copy and paste the data, but that would cause problems if you update any of the information on the supporting tabs. You would have to remember to go to the summary tab and update it. Referencing data is the best practice. The first way to reference the sales data from the sales tab is by typing equal, then the sheet name, exclamation point, and then the cell address. Then I can autofill for the rest of the companies by double-clicking on the lower right corner. I also like to go back to double check that I link to the right data. In the formula bar, I can also see where is the data coming from. When I want to reference a cell from a tab that has a space in its name, I have to wrap it in single quotes before I add the exclamation point and cell address. Interestingly here, I type profit with a small letter on purpose to see what would happen, and Google Sheets corrected it for me, which is great. These ways of linking to the other tabs is easy enough, but I really dislike it because I have to remember the syntax and the cell addresses that I want to copy from. So a much easier way is to put equal and then go to the tab you want to reference data from and just click on the cell you want to link to. Then copy it for the rest of the companies. I prefer this so much more. Finally, sometimes the data that you want to pull is not in a different tab, but rather in a completely different file. If I want to link to the market value data that is in another sheet, I will have to use the import range function. The syntax for the function is the spreadsheet URL address and then the tab name and range. I will type equal, then find import range function. Now I will go back to the market value worksheet and copy its URL address. Then I will go back to my formula and paste it there. Then put a comma and add market value tab name and range C2 to C16. However, when I press enter, I got an error message. The reason why is that the sheet URL address has to be in double quotation marks. Once I go to my formula bar and fix that, I get another warning that a permission needs to be granted from the owner of the worksheet for the data to be pulled. Since I am the owner of both worksheets, I will click the Allow Access button. Now the market value data was imported. The advantage of using Google Sheets and sharing files is that you can collaborate with others in real time, and multiple users can work on the same file. There is no version confusion. Let's learn how to share your files in different ways and set up access levels, as well as how to protect your files from unknown editors changing your worksheets. We definitely don't want that. When you hover over the share icon next to your avatar in the upper right corner, if the file has a lock on it and says private to only me, it means that the file has not been shared with anyone. If you click on the share button, you will be able to share your file in two ways, either by giving access to G Drive, or you can create a link that you can share. In the box at the top, add people or groups. You can paste someone's email address or pick from a list of people you previously shared files with. You can notify others via email that you are sharing a file with them. If you don't notify them, they will still have access to the file, and the file will show up in their G Drive, but they just might not know about it. In the top right corner, you can specify whether you want the people listed to have a viewer, commenter, or editor access. Viewers can't edit or comment on your file. Commenters can only comment but can't edit, and editors can make changes to your file. Additionally, if you click the Settings option in the top right corner, you can modify the editor and viewer access further. You can set a limit so that editors could edit your file but not share the file or change permissions. Finally, you can also limit the viewers from being able to download, print, or copy the file. This is very important because if you have any hidden tabs, once viewers make a copy or download your file, they will be able to unhide them. Very few people know that, and I will show you how that works later. Let's go back to our file, and I'm going to hide one tab to show you later on how viewers could access it, even in this limited role. Let's go to my Gmail in my testing account. Because I opted for the notification, an email was sent with the link to the file. However, people who are not notified, they also have the file available in their G Drive. If you just click on Shared with Me on the left side, you will see all the files that someone shared with you. I can see the 2000 Global Companies worksheet there. If I open my email, I can see a preview of the file and can open it from here. When I open the file, at the top I see that my role is set as a viewer with a view-only mode, letting me know that I can't edit this file. However, if I click on it, I can request edit access from the owner, which means an email will be sent to request it. I'm going to request an access and include a brief message. In the meantime, I will try to edit and delete data in the file. But I can't because I'm just a viewer. Once the file is shared, at the top, you have a list of people who have access to it. The list can include anonymous users if the file was shared without restrictions. There is a chat option to communicate with other users and the owner. I can send a message requesting editor access. On the other side, I can read the chat message and respond. If I want to change the level of access, I can hover over the sharing icon and see that the file is currently shared with one person. What is great is that all the different levels of access are listed here and I can modify them without having to start from zero. I'm going to change the access for Aki's lab as a commenter. I know she will not be happy about it as she asked to be an editor, but that's what we're going to do for now. On Aki Lab's side though, I still see the view-only mode and can edit or comment. What you have to do is refresh the file for the new access to work. Now the mode changed to comments only and I can provide a comment. The moment I add a comment, it appeared on the owner side and I can see it when I hover over the cell. Let's say I feel pretty accommodating today and so I will grant Aki Lab editor access. Now any changes that Aki Lab's account makes appear pretty instantaneously on other users' side. Okay, I can see that the lab editor made poor choices and messed up my file, so I can go back to the access setting area and remove access. I may not even notify the person about it, and they would be making changes to the file, etc. But once they try to refresh it, a warning message would let them know that they lost access and need to request it again. Once the owner receives a request to access the file again, I can either share or decline it. Sometimes you may be managing a file but you no longer want to, or someone else is taking over the project. So you can transfer the ownership of the file to someone else. You will send them an invitation to take the ownership. They can either accept it or decline it. If they accept the ownership, they will now be listed as the owner and you will be listed as an editor. The second way to share your files is with a link. Click on the general access and specify whether you want the link to be restricted or anyone with the link can access the file. The restricted access requires that you add users in the upper section to actually open the file through the link. If you select the anyone with the link setting, you can still specify the role of everyone who will receive the link. You can set the role for others as viewers, commenters, or editors. Once I select the viewer role and copy the link, it means that whomever gets the link won't be able to edit my file and see any hidden tabs. But if I have not changed the viewer settings, they would be able to copy or download it and then easily see the hidden tabs, because at this point they are the owners of the copy. So you can go back to the settings and make a change to this option to make sure you protect any sensitive hidden information. Now let me show you what can happen when you are not careful with sharing your files. If I create a link that anyone can access and set the role as editor, I will paste it now into incognito window to test it. You can see that I am able to delete data. Anyone can share and reshare this link and edit information in your file. So you want to be very careful when you create a link that anyone can access with editor role. Finally, sometimes you may want to share a file as a template or force others to make a copy of it before they view it. You can also do that. To set this up, go to Share, set general access to anyone with the link, then set it with a viewer role and copy the link. Now, what we will need to change is the ending of our link. Instead of the portion that starts with edit, we will replace it with template/preview. So this would be the link I would share with the changed ending. Whoever gets it will be prompted to use the file as a template. As an alternative, you can prompt people to open your file as a copy by changing the ending of your link to copy. Once others open the link, they will be prompted to make a copy of the file. Their new file name will start with the copy of, then the original file name. You may want to share your Google Sheets file either as Excel, PDF, or print a copy for yourself or others. Let's learn some tips and tricks on how to do that. To save a Google Sheets file as Excel, go to File, Download, and choose Microsoft Excel. The file is easily converted to Excel. Most formatting and formulas get easily converted. Google Sheets data is highly compatible with Excel and vice versa. To download a PDF version of your file, there are a couple of ways to do that. The first is by going to File, Download, and choose PDF. Once you do that, you will see options where you can choose paper size, page orientation, and all other options that are available when you do print setup that we will go over next. Once you're satisfied, press the Export button in the top right corner to save your file. You can open the file with either Adobe Acrobat or any other PDF reader. To print your file, go to File and all the way down to Print. You can also use the universal shortcut Command+P on Mac or Control+P on PC to get to Print Setup. Once you're here, you will see a preview of the way your file will be printed. On the right, there are many options that you can use to customize your print. At the very top, you can specify whether you want to print the current sheet or tab, workbook, which means all the tabs in your current file, or selected range. The current sheet is 2 pages long, but when I choose workbook, my print preview shows me 5 pages because this includes all the tabs in the file. When I choose selected cells, it shows me cell E18 because that's probably where I left my cursor. There is nothing else. You have to make a selection for this option to work. I will cancel this print, go back to my file, and make a selection. Now when I choose selected cells, it tells me the range that it would print, and I can also see it in the print preview. I will go back to the current sheet for print and go through all the other options. You can choose paper size for your print. By default, you have the standard letter size 8.5 by 11, but you can also choose legal size or even custom size. There are 2 ways you can print your file, in landscape or portrait orientation. If your data has many columns, you may want to print it as landscape, while sheets with many rows may be presented better in portrait mode. If you can't see the entire preview of your file, click on the minus in the lower part of your preview to zoom out. The options under scale can be a little bit confusing, but they are very important how your data is presented. Here you can control whether any of your rows or columns get cut off or overflow to additional pages. The normal 100% setting means the document will be printed to fit the font, cells, and data all being at 100% of how they are set up in the document. However, you may not be able to fit everything on one page. In my case, our personal budget is split into 6 pages at this setting. The Fit to Width option will fit your content within the width of your specified paper size and orientation. It will span 1 page in width and the rest will fit pages down. The Fit to Height option will fit your content within the height of your specified paper size and orientation. It will span 1 page down and the rest will fit pages across. In our case, it all fit on 1 page. The Fit to Page option adjusts both the width and height of your content to fit exactly 1 page, which in our case is identical to Fit to Height. You can also select custom number to adjust the scale percentage for your data and text, like 80%. The next option that you can adjust for print are margins. The normal option is selected by default and sets margins in between the other 2 options. The narrow margins reduces the amount of white space around the content, so you can fit more on 1 page with the current settings. On the other hand, wide margins add more white space around your content. When you select custom numbers, you will see dashed lines representing margin lines, which you can grab and manually adjust to see how that changes your print layout. Google Sheets also automatically sets page breaks based on the paper size, margins, and scaling options you've selected for printing. When you select the Set Custom Page Breaks option, you will see the automatic breaks as dashed lines that indicate where the content will be divided when printed. You can grab the dashed lines and readjust them to places that make more sense. For example, maybe I will split my data into half here and make sure all the expenses are listed together. I can also reset them again by pressing the reset at the top. Then I can readjust them again. Once I'm happy with the setup, I will choose Confirm Breaks. Once you set up the breaks manually, you will have an option to go back to automatic breaks by sliding the green custom page break button to the left. Under formatting, you can uncheck the Show Gridlines option. It will hide gridlines if you have them, but it won't show them if you hid them under the View menu. You can also have any notes, but not comments, print out on the last page. The Page Order option lays out content for printing. It defines order in which pages are arranged. The over then down means that after the first page, it will print the page horizontally with columns next, and then it will move down to the next rows. So right, then down. The down then over option means that after the first page, it will print the rows down before it moves to the data in horizontal columns on the right. So down, then right. I have this personal budget title on my worksheet, and since it is getting cut off in my print, I will go back to it and hide it. I will add it as a header later. Whenever you have data laid out on your pages, they are by default set at center horizontally and top vertically, but you can change that in the alignment section. I can move the sheet data center, left, or right horizontally, and I can place it at the top, bottom, and center vertically. One last thing we can set up for our print are the headers and footers. You have some default fields that you can place in your header and footers, such as page numbers, workbook title, sheet name, current date and time. However, sometimes these options don't work 100% of the time. When I click on the page numbers and workbook title several times, it wouldn't work, although I was able to add the default sheet name, current date and time. If you're having trouble with the default fields or want to add more custom information and change the placement, select the Edit Custom Fields option. Here you have 6 areas where you can add information for headers and footers. Let's click the field in the top left corner. I'm going to add my workbook title here. In the middle, I will type Personal Budget, since I hid it from my file because it was getting cut off. I also like to add page numbers, and I can do that by selecting from the 3 page number layouts. Once I'm satisfied with my header and footer setup, I will confirm at the top. Sometimes when your data spills over a few pages, you may end up with missing column and row headings. You can't tell what the data is referring to like I have it here. We need to specify and add row and column headings to our print. However, these options are grayed out for me and I can't select them here. The reason why is that I have to set them up in my worksheet by freezing the rows and columns I want to repeat on all pages. So I'm going to cancel my print setup and drag the freeze panes to repeat the months heading up to row 3 and budget categories up to column C. Once I do that, I will go back to my print setup and I can already see what the data on the last page is referring to. What is great is that I was able to cancel my print setup, make changes in my file, and come back here to continue where I left off. I didn't lose anything that I selected up to this point. Before I print, I will actually go back and change the scale to fit to width, so it is 2 pages long, not 8. I am now ready to print or download it as a PDF. Let's click Next. I can pick my printer at the top and still adjust few settings that are available through the printer that I have, so it may be different for you. When I am ready, I will click Print. I can also save my file as PDF. This is the second way of saving our file as PDF. We went through all these settings to make our PDF in a print-ready form. Once saved to my computer, I can open it with an Adobe Acrobat, Mac Preview, or any other PDF reader and print them. Since Google Sheets is a cloud-based software available through a browser, sometimes people try to print the Google Sheets files through the browser menu by going to File and Print in the Chrome menu, for example. When that happens, you may see dates and website address at the top and URL address at the bottom of your pages. The print setup options are fewer, although if you select more settings, you can often uncheck the headers and footer option, which here means removing the web address and title. The way Sheets prints from the browser is almost as a screenshot of what you have in your browser window. Confusingly enough, the Chrome browser, for example, and the Google Sheets both have a shortcut for print, Command+P on Mac or Control+P on PC. So you want to double check that you get the Google Sheets print options and not the browser one. Thanks so much for watching.